Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. And we got a treat for you. Josh Guerrero from the Colorful Gardener YouTube channel chats with horticulturalist Sheree Wright at the Furman University Rose Garden. It's an episode you don't want to miss. Stay with us. The Rose Chat podcast starts now.
It's time for the Rose Chat podcast, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the world's most beloved flower, the rose. Join award-winning gardeners Chris Van Cleve and Teresa Byington as they chat with rose lovers and experts from around the globe. With each episode, you'll gain valuable knowledge and insights to achieve the rose garden you've always dreamed of. Listen now as we explore the world of roses.
Try Haven brand soil conditioners, providing generations of gardeners with a truly all-natural alternative to chemical fertilizers with their line of composted manure and alfalfa teas. Easy to brew and use on all indoor and outdoor plants. Find them online at manuretea.com.
Hello guys, and welcome to Rose Chat. Today here I'm with Sheree Wright, and we are sitting right next to the rose garden, and it is looking gorgeous right now. Sheree has done such a wonderful job with keeping these roses in peak performance. It's the middle of May. Now is the time to go out into the rose garden. Hey Sheree, how are you doing?
I'm great, Josh. Good. I'm so glad you could come visit me at Furman.
Oh yeah, this is a dream for me to walk around and see these roses. I keep looking at them. They keep drawing my eye. So you have done such a spectacular job with them.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm blown away. And I walk through this garden with my dog all the time, and see the lake, which is right across the way, and I really enjoy these roses. So I've always wondered, where did this rose garden come from? Like, what was the reason to have a rose garden here?
Well, Furman, which was established in 1826, moved to this location in 1988. They opened the university here, and originally it was just a male college, and then it joined with the women's college. So when they redesigned this campus, there were a lot of people that wanted some beautiful ornamental features, and the rose garden ended up being one of the important features that was designed by the landscape architects of Webel and Innocente out of New York.
Oh, wow, okay.
Because Alistair Furman and his wife, Janie Earle Furman, who the garden is named after,
right.
They had given bequests for scholarships and to honor faculty, but the garden ultimately was named in her honor in 1969.
Yeah.
Because she loved the rose garden.
Okay.
So that's one of the beginnings of it.
And has it always looked like this? Has it always been a formal garden, or has it just changed over time? Or
no, it's always from the beginning. It was designed as a parterre garden, which is a formal rose garden,
right.
And it was mainly hybrid teas with some tree roses originally. And believe it or not, it was installed in 1961, and it only cost $17,500.
Wow.
And we're about to do a renovation next year, and it's going to cost a little more.
Oh,
a little more than that.
Okay, a renovation. That's exciting.
Because think of it, the soil here has been in these beds since 1961.
Right.
So we're talking 58 years.
Yeah, it's time for some new soil, it sounds like.
It is.
And, I mean, as I'm walking through, I love the formal style. It feels like I'm a lord and lady walking through it. I feel very grand seeing all these roses. This must how, very wealthy kings and queens felt walking through. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to feel very grand. And it's just a beautiful place to walk around. And it, brightens your mood for sure. Even though it's a cloudy day right now, just looking at it puts a smile on my face. So sometimes I see events going on here, mostly weddings, and it's under that wonderful structure in the center of the rose garden.
It came from Florence. And It's a 19th century Florentine pergola that was originally in the Hips Garden in Greenville, and they donated it to us. And we have, there's all kinds of graduation pictures, wedding pictures, prom pictures. It's definitely one of those more important focal points in the garden.
It really goes well with it. I like it a lot. I mean, the architecture, everything looks right. You've got behind that a beautiful fountain with, it looks like, is it a Lady Banksy rose?
Yes, it is a Lady Banksy rose, and it's a grotto over there.
A little grotto, and you've got stairs going up to the top so you can look over and see everything. It's just, everything looks and feels right. I feel like with some rose gardens, the feel isn't right. It's kind of awkward, but this garden, everything is symmetrical, everything is in order, everything is in place, and all the roses are looking like they're just standing there looking at you, and they're ready for you to come into the garden and see you.
And they smell good.
And they smell great too. As I noticed another thing of walking in, even though it's a cloudy day, I could still smell them, and they look so great. So over time, as you're taking care of this garden, are there any favorites, or are there people that come in, they consistently see a rose and they're blown away, they ask the name for it?
Well, fragrance is very important to most people. So the first thing when they come into the garden, they'll come in, they'll try to smell. Now, as we know, modern roses, they've bred that out of them, but now that's an important feature. So more of our roses are fragrant. So I love Double Delight, always loved that rose. Dolly Parton has a lot of fragrance. Fragrant Cloud has a lot of fragrance. Bella Roma is a lovely fragrant rose too. Memorial Day. There's quite a few in here that have very nice fragrance.
Nice. And are those mostly hybrid teas, or is it a mix of different?
It's mostly hybrid teas, but we do have some floribundas, and then we also have some of the polyanthus in here.
Okay, yeah, I've noticed.
Like Pinocchio. I mean, some of the original roses, believe it or not, are still in this garden.
Wow, yeah.
Which, if you really take good care of, and most of these are grafted roses.
Yeah, and I've heard that some hybrid teas have a lifespan of about 25 years.
Well, they can live longer if they're well taken care of.
Right, okay, so, I mean, it's been well over 25 years for these roses. So.
And this Givenchy garden that is dedicated above the dining hall, which we'll go look at later, that's been there since 1987.
Wow.
So think about that. And those roses still look
great.
Really good.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Is there a personal favorite of yours? It doesn't...
How can you say there's a
I know.
You're like your children. You're like
I know.
I mean, I've always loved Double Delight because of the change in the bloom color and, of course, the fragrance of it.
Yeah.
I am partial to bicolors, so I do like the ones that have more than one color in them, or maybe the reverse could be a different color. I do love those, and I love bright colors.
Yeah.
So.
Is there any in your home garden that's a favorite for you?
Oh, I like Faith Whittisley.
Okay.
Which is a tea rose that was bred recently by Veru. So many of the Cordis roses now are so nice, and they're a little easier to care for, so you're not spraying them as often. They have more of an old-timey, and they are trying to put that fragrance back in.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. That it was all about form and that got lost, and now it's going back to smell, because the first thing you do is you put your nose into a rose.
Yeah, you want to see if it's fragrant. So what I'm working right now with Jack Page at the Perfect Rose and Robert Myers to redesign the garden. So they've got the dimensions, and I've given them the specifications and what the garden was originally. I actually have the plan from Innocenti and Webble as far as how the garden was originally laid out. And so we're working on redoing it that way. So it would be like it used to be.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting. But just in general, everything, when we've had to replace roses, it could be mainly hybrid teas or floribundas.
Okay.
I mean, you can't. One of the great things about floribundas is they give you so much bloom and so much color.
Oh yeah.
And they kind of hide the legginess sometimes of what happens with hybrid teas, and they get tall and
and you'll notice that by end of summer that the hybrid teas, at least I've seen,
very, very tall.
They're taller than me.
Look at how tall they are now.
I know.
They're going to be very, very tall by then.
It's almost like you want to make them into a climber at that at that point. Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead.
I would like to talk somewhat about the maintenance.
Go ahead.
Now, when people look at the hedging around, they assume it's boxwood. It's not. It's native Yaupon holly, which is almost indestructible. It can take really moist soils. It can take dry soils. It can take heavy pruning. It can take sun. It can take shade. So we have cut these hedges back probably sometimes down to 12 inches tall.
Right.
And then they grow big, and then we have to cut them back again. So that's one of the great features of the garden that give it its bones. So a good garden has to have bones. And then the focal point, of course, is the gazebo. But then in each bed, as we go around and you'll see, There's actually 8 quadrants. There's the 4 inner quadrants you can walk into, and then each one of those have a sky pencil holly planted in the middle, and then they're surrounded by the hedge and all of the hybrid teas, mainly hybrid teas in the main 4 quadrants. And then the outer 4 quadrants are totally enclosed, so people can't really go in there. I have to hop over it.
Yeah. I know. I was wondering how you guys get in there.
You got to see me with my spray gear hopping into the garden so I can get in and spray underneath the leaves. It's interesting. I'll be glad when they prune the hedges again, because they're getting a little too tall for my short legs to get over that hedge. But I spray the garden every 2 weeks.
Okay.
All right. Let's just talk about the annual kind of schedule.
Okay. Yeah.
So we pretty much don't do anything in January. In February, research shows that if you spray them with a systemic fungicide, it'll help prevent black spot from occurring early in the season.
Okay.
So I'll spray once in February. We do our major pruning. I have a project crew that helps me with the pruning, because that's a bit much for me to do alone.
Yeah.
And we'll prune them down to 2 feet typically. I mean, I'd like to go lower, but because of timing, and I don't want it too low, because I want, for commencement, which is this week at Furman University, I want to make sure that we got a lot of blooms. There's going to be a lot of pictures taken in this rose garden.
For sure.
In the next week, it's going to be crazy. So we prune them back, and then we'll do Sheely's Purely Organic, or Mills Magic Mix, depending on what's available, and we'll fertilize all the roses. And then the other thing that we'll do is put down the granular Nature's Nog, which is a humic acid-based product, granular, and that helps with mycorrhiza and all the other wonderful microbes that are in the soil. And we want to encourage that, because the organics only last about 6 weeks. So then we go back with like 3900. In my own garden or gardens I take care of, I'll do blood meal, because they need a kind of a boost of that nitrogen early spring. And then the next thing I'll do is put down some kind of controlled release nitrogen. I don't use Osmocote anymore because we have excessive phosphorus in this garden. I do a soil test every few years. Hopefully that will be ameliorated once we renovate the garden and we put all new soil in there.
Right.
So most of the time, if I'm going to use a slow release fertilizer, it's going to have very little phosphorus in it. So it could be like 18, at the max 4, 12 or something along that lines, because it doesn't need the phosphorus. And the Nature's Nog's purpose is to help start releasing in the soil that phosphorus, so the rose
can bloom.
And the pH is critical. When I first started here, I've been here almost 12 years, the pH was very low. It was below 6, which means, again, your phosphorus and other nutrients are not available to the plant. So we had to start putting lime to raise the pH, and that helped a lot. So then the last most important thing, besides pruning, you do it in March, then you do it again in August, because you want a nice fall bloom.
Right.
I mean, this garden is in bloom all summer, but as you know, the heat makes roses much smaller.
Right.
And they recycle much faster. So when people come, it's not like now where you've got these nice big blooms and they're smaller blooms. So that's blooms, but smaller. But that fall bloom, when we prune it by mid-August, beautiful fall bloom. It's almost as good as it is now. And that's usually around homecoming. So I try to time that. I'll go back, 6 to 8 weeks and see, okay, here's when homecoming is. This is when we need to prune the roses. And we'll do the same thing. We'll do an organic, and we'll do a slow release, like a 3 to 4 month slow release.
Yeah.
So, because roses are heavy feeders, they need a lot of nitrogen. I didn't have time last year. I was still working in the Asia garden. I was promoted to horticulturalist last year, so I was just too busy to do the liquid. But I really want to see if I can get the roses to even bloom better by doing the Mills Easy Feed or some kind of water soluble.
Right.
Fertilizer.
So it sounds like your fertilizers at this point with roses. I mean, you have to get that nice succession of blooms.
Definitely.
and learning about fertilizers is important, because you have deadlines you have to meet
for events on campus.
Right.
But soil's everything. Mm-hmm. I can't emphasize how important it is to people that are hearing this podcast. Get your soil tested. know what's going on. Find out how much organic matter. You want 5 to 10% organic matter in your rose garden, and typically in the South, it's way below 5%.
Yeah.
Just because our soils have been so, the rain and everything that goes on with them. And a plant, you won't get good plants no matter what they are if you don't have good soil.
You heard that, guys. I mean, in my own garden, I have nothing but red clay here. And
it's bad.
Yeah, it's bad. Okay, so I have really bad red clay in my garden. And so the best thing to do is organic matter.
Yes.
Add broken down leaves,
conditioner,
soil conditioners, lime, all that.
Pine bark fines.
And you see how well your plants reward you by giving the good stuff, basically. So get that soil right so you can have a really beautiful garden for sure.
Now, the next most important thing, of course, is spraying. Unfortunately, hybrid teas are very prone to a disease called black spot, which is diplocarpin rosea. So it's a given that you've got to spray every 2 weeks to keep that from taking over your garden so you don't end up with blooms on a stick.
Right.
Because black spot will literally just defoliate your rose garden. So I spray every 2 weeks, and I always recommend a systemic fungicide, which means it actually gets inside the rose leaves and canes, and a contact fungicide, which will kill all black spot spores so you don't get resistance. So we're talking about, just as an example, propiconazole, myclobutanol, which are the chemical names, and that's what you should look for when you look at a label, not because there's many brands that sell those chemicals. And then the contact fungicides can be mancozeb or daconil. Daconil you can use in the fall and the spring. Got to be careful; it burns rose leaves.
Okay.
So I'll use some kind of spreader sticker with it. I'll combine my contact and systemic fungicide, and then I don't have to worry about resistance. If you use just a systemic fungicide, you must rotate it, and that has to do with chemical class, and that's on the label. So always read your chemical labels.
Right.
Always wear gloves when you're mixing concentrates, because that's usually how people get in trouble. And then wear long sleeves, pants, socks. Don't go out to your garden, no matter what it is, if you're not at least dressed appropriately. So I'm very careful about that. Now, I use a respirator. I don't have to. It is not required on the chemical labels that I use, but I spray so many rose gardens besides the Furman Rose Garden. I don't want to take any chances.
Right.
And I have a chemical shield.
I think I've actually seen you out there.
Probably.
I was walking. I was like, oh my goodness.
Like a space alien.
Yes, I was like, there's a space alien in the rose garden right now.
I know, I hate scaring people, but, I do so much of it, I just don't want to expose myself to the chemicals.
No, it's what you need to do.
Once it's dried, I have no problem. I can go in the next day and just continue doing what I'm doing. So that's no problem. So that's pretty much the general maintenance. Again, once we get to the fall, we're always deadheading it, all right? And then we'll allow students or visitors to take the roses, and of course they love that. Who doesn't when you come into a rose garden? When we're pruning, we put the roses on the hedge, and they're welcome to take them and enjoy them.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. I've walked in, I said, oh, there's roses on the hedge. I guess I'll just take a few of these home for myself.
And I do want to give credit to Bruce Fox, who was my mentor and was the horticulturalist here until last March when he retired. And we worked together on this rose garden, and Bruce was such a hoot and fun to work with, and I miss him, and he loved the rose garden.
Yeah, how can you not? Just looking at it, it must be a treat for you every day to come, especially in May, and see.
It is. It's really a main feature of the garden. A lot of people come to Furman just to see the rose garden. Besides, we're real near the Swamp Rabbit Trail, so any of you visiting Greenville, you can park and to run or walk or bike the Swamp Rabbit Trail between Greenville and Travelers Rest. Greenville's just a wonderful place to visit. Not only do we have the Rose Garden at Furman, but we have specialty. There's an Asia garden. There's a Japanese temple called the Place of Peace. We have a quarter-acre organic vegetable garden. And then we have flower beds, big flower beds all around the university, and these amazing fountains.
Oh, yeah. Furman, as I mentioned, I walk around all the time, and it's a beautiful place. There's some places I haven't walked around yet. And I'm like, I can't believe I haven't walked around here. Every bit of this place is gorgeous. The landscape is done so well. The trees are placed, and the flowers beneath it. Everything looks so great.
And we got friendly squirrels.
Oh yeah, and I've noticed that in the rose garden, squirrels, chipmunks, and birds are everywhere.
Look, he thinks we're going to feed him. But the lake is beautiful, and I do take care of the swans, so I hope you get a picture of the mama and papa and cygnet out there. We have one cygnet here this year, and you've got to get a picture of that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
People ask us about the bees because we do have a beehive over at the organic farm, and in general, the only roses that bees are attracted to are any bloom that's really open and the stamens are showing. Since most of the roses here are very double, I don't have to worry much about the bees, but I rarely use insecticides just because I just don't want to have any chance of harming our honeybees especially. So if I do see a bunch of open blooms here, I'll cut them off before I spray, because even some fungicides can have a negative impact on honeybees and native pollinators. So we're super careful. Again, the only time I will spray for insecticide is June when we get Japanese beetles. So, and again, I'll be very careful and cut off any blooms I think would be attractive to a pollinator, and I'll spray. It can be merit, which is imidacloprid, is really good on killing Japanese beetles. Depending on if I have student help, we may come out here with a bucket of soapy water. The first thing in the morning and drown them. You go pop them in the bucket. So I'm very careful about that, and I do spray early in the morning, which is a good thing. Generally honeybees are not out, and they don't like cloudy weather or wet weather, so that's another day. As long as it's not raining, I can spray. Even though the original garden was designed mainly for hybrid teas, they did put a polyantha in here, and that's white and pink Pinocchio.
Okay.
Which, as you can see, is very shrubby. I mean, lots and lots of clustered blooms. And then, of course, our hybrid teas are typically one stem. You get a flower per stem, unless it's a grandiflora, then you get several flowers per stem. And then your floribundas are shorter plants, but again, we have a candelabra, which means lots of flowers per stem. So they're very showy and they're very nice in a rose garden because they have a lot of blooms. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what's in this garden.
Thank you so much for speaking to me today about the rose garden. It was such a thrill, and it's always a pleasure being here with you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I really hope that more people come and visit the rose garden. It's really just a beautiful, peaceful place.
Well, friends, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Rose Chat podcast, and I thank you for listening today. Special thank you to Josh Guerrero from the Colorful Gardener YouTube channel. Now, this horticulturalist is making a name for himself in Greenville, South Carolina, and I invite you to check out his channel. To learn more about the magnificent rose garden at Furman University, visit their website, furman.edu. Until next time, happy gardening from your friends at Rose Chat.
You've been listening to the Rose Chat podcast with Chris Van Cleve and Teresa Byington, expert rose gardeners who want to help you achieve the rose garden of your dreams. Don't miss an episode. Listen anytime on our website at rosechatpodcast.com or listen on the go via the Rose Chat app on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Share this podcast with your social networks and join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by using the hashtag RoseChat. Join us next time for another edition of the Rose Chat podcast. The Rose Chat podcast is a production of the Rose Chat Media Group, Birmingham, Alabama.